All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get things started. Looks like it's about that time. Thank you all for joining today's consulting webinar. This is a Laserfiche build along, and my name is Steven Kreutzfeldt. I'm a business process consultant here with CDI, and I'm going to be taking you through an introductory look at WebLink and specifically how to build WebLink search forms. So first of all, if this is your first build along, what exactly is a build along? In a nutshell, a build-along is an interactive experience designed to guide the viewer through creation and deployment of a common business process. Now, what that means is that if you're following along with the steps that I'm taking, by the end of this, you'll have your own deployable process. In this case, as we go through and build search forms in WebLink, you should have a deployable search form by the end of this presentation. If at any point you have any questions or need help, please post the questions into the chat box on the bottom in the floating window and go to webinar. There will be some time reserved for the very end of this where I'll go through and answer as many questions as I can. Now, in order to get the most out of this, first off, make sure you're taking good notes. Personally, I find it really helpful to also take screenshots as we go along to help remember. Also, don't be afraid to ask any questions. Chances are, if something comes up that you feel like you missed or don't understand, you're not the only one in the webinar. So feel free to post those questions and we'll try to clarify them at the end of this. Please also complete the survey at the end of this presentation as well. We do take those seriously and do the best we can to strive towards excellence. The more feedback we get, the better we can make these. And finally, this will be recorded. So if you want to go back and watch it, this will be posted to CDI's YouTube channel. Should be up by tomorrow. And we also have individual sessions available upon request. So today's process is going to be building search forms in WebLink. The intended audience for this webinar is going to be WebLink administrators, users who may be new to Laserfiche WebLink, or possibly individuals who are trying to decide if WebLink is going to be a good fit for their organization or not. If this is your first introduction to WebLink, what is it? Laserfiche WebLink is a public portal that allows users to view your Laserfiche documents in a read-only format from a web browser. Typically, most of our users are in the public sector, so you have citizens or people outside the organization who are logging into a website to view public documents. So to help you follow along, we're going to start out by taking a look at the WebLink designer. We'll then go into how to search in WebLink and how a user can actually navigate the portal and find the documents that they're looking for. And we'll finish up with the actual build along by designing and creating and deploying a new search form. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So today we're going to be working with the WebLink designer. And so if you're on the Laserfiche server, this is what the WebLink designer is going to look like. When you open it up, you'll notice that there's a couple of different tabs along the left-hand side that we can work from. Now, the purpose of this is exactly how it sounds. This is where we're going to actually design the public portal where people are able to log in and then view and navigate your Laserfiche documents in a read-only format. Step one is going to be to make sure that that connection is configured correctly. So which server are we going to be looking at, repository name, and all that other information. Also, what is the URL going to be? If you want to configure that, make it a little bit more intuitive by giving either your organization name or something else. You have the full ability to configure that as well. There are a couple of options for things like single sign-on. You will have to have a specific public user configured in order for this to work effectively. And all of that will be configured down here with the public user option. Now, if you're someone like me and you don't have a lot of experience designing web pages, they make it relatively easy to configure the theme and add some colors schemes to align with the look and feel of your own organizational web page. So here at theme, you can actually change some of those different colors, change the fonts. You can even upload images, so your organization logo. This way you can actually create a public portal that's going to align itself with your web page. Now, the welcome page is also going to be important because that's the first thing that visitors are going to see. If they're coming to your portal to look for specific public-facing documents, we want to make that as easy and intuitive as possible so that they can navigate and find exactly what they're looking for. So some things that we can do is give it a nice clean title and some basic text of how to navigate through it. Are we going to have a basic search box? Which repository are we going to be connected to? And then you can start adding some quick links or hyperlinks right at the bottom. So it's the first thing that people see is quick ways to go in and visit either an external URL, possibly to your own web page, or in this case, I just used Google as an example. We can also have it navigate directly to a specific area within your folder structure. So if you want the users to go in and maybe minutes or agendas are the things that people are going to be navigating to most frequently, why not just have a quick link that takes them directly to that folder so they can start navigating down through it. Similarly, we also have the search forms, which we'll be looking at in more detail later. But in a nutshell, what a search form is a way to open up almost an external form that's going to have 2 or 3 fields in it that allow you to search by very basic criteria. So that way you can zone in, or zoom in rather, on the specific types of documents that you may need to navigate to. We also give you the ability to configure some of the other additional navigational features. So do we want to include a welcome page link? Do we want to include a folder browser where they can go directly to the folder structure? Should we keep a search link? You've got a lot of different options. What's really nice about this is the ability to toggle them on and off rather than trying to use programming language to develop these different actions. Similarly, you can also establish how you want to view the different documents and how those are showing up. Do we want them to fit a certain way? Do we want to display the breadcrumbs? Is there a watermark that's going to be featured there as well? And dovetailing right along with that is going to be the search results. That sometimes search results can get a little bit messy because there are a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different features to the documents that are within Laserfiche. So here you can add a little bit of configurations that will show that, maybe we'd like to just hide this feature. We don't need user selected fields. Contact hits, yeah, that'd be fine, but why don't we go ahead and just minimize it so that way it's not taking up too much space. And as you're going through and configuring these and customizing them, you can see an example of what that's going to look like when your users actually retrieve their search results. And then there's some other basic options when it comes to searching. Do we want to enable text, annotations? We want to include fuzzy search. So you have some other options down here as well. And then also email configurations. So once you have gone through each of these different items and you've configured and made your public portal look the way that you think is going to be the most intuitive and the best deployment for your organization, you're going to end up with something that looks a little bit like this. Now, obviously, this is pretty minimalistic. We do also have the option to add a little bit of CSS. If you have someone who is more adept at programming, this is a chance for them to really flex some of those skill sets and make this look really pretty. We have a lot of clients that have done some pretty amazing things, but making the aesthetics of the page very clean and crisp. But with this, I just want to show the benefits and show some of the features of the basic options that you would have for things like the search tool. And then here are some of our quick links that I mentioned earlier. So if we want to just navigate straight to Google, we can do that. We have, looks like a client homepage here, and then we have some of our other options for our quick searches. So that's the one I want to look at first, is search HR documents. So if we select this is what we're going to be building toward the end here. You'll notice that it's very simple. We just added 2 fields. But if a user visits the site and just wants to view some HR documents, they may only need something like an employee ID. In this case, I'm going to use a wildcard because I don't really care which employee I'm looking for. And maybe I just want to see some confirmations or some basic paperwork. Once we hit search, it's going to retrieve those different documents that we search for that fit that criteria in the manner that we configured earlier, how we want to view that. You'll notice we have these nice clean dropdowns so we can see the different documents. If we want to open these up we'll be able to see the metadata and some other information there. And what's also worth noting here is that the only documents that are going to be available are those that are marked for public view. If you want to also add redactions and restrict the amount of information that your viewers are going to be able to see, that's another feature that's absolutely available here. Returning home, we can just hit the icon in the top left-hand corner and that'll take us right back. Looks like it refreshed here. We also have the option to browse, because that was one of the toggle buttons that we put on. And when I say browse, I mean literally browse the folder structure within the Laserfiche client. But once again, it's going to limit us to only those documents that are flagged for public view. So if I want to view the agendas, I can go in here. It looks like we have them limited by a year, and I can just click through like I would within my own repository. Be able to open all of those up because the public viewer has access to these. And if there was a template assigned, we'd be able to see all the additional metadata, any annotations that may be included as well. And all of this is going to be view only. So let's go ahead and jump back here. Now the other options are, we have the quick search feature, which would operate just like the quick search would in Laserfiche, but we also have the advanced search capability as well. Now I always recommend using the advanced search whenever possible, because it allows you to drill down and limit the types of documents they're looking for by multiple different criteria. That rather than just looking for some keywords, we can start to customize it by saying, show me only documents, no folders, no shortcuts or anything like that. Maybe we only want to see agendas. Well, we can also do things that say, maybe I also want to see things that are customized within a specific date. So now we can also go in here and select our date as well. And select the date range from maybe this month. So now we can really start to limit the type of documents that we're going to retrieve. So rather than looking and pulling all of our agendas like we would in the quick search by just using this field and getting maybe hundreds, we're only retrieving 3 or 4 documents, so we can really find the ones we're looking for. And it's that concept that is really going to be driving this build along, because that's what we want for all of the visitors to our website. How can we make it easier for them to find the documents they need without having to customize the dropdowns here? So let's go ahead and jump back into our design tool quick. Now let's take a look at how we can configure that and how we can customize that to fit us. So if you're following along at home, if you have the WebLink designer open, we're going to navigate and start out from the welcome page tab, and then we're going to go to the search forms tab here also. Feel free to also take screenshots. This would be a place where I would certainly take screenshots just to help get things started. Now with search forms, we're actually going to add a new one by hitting the plus here. It's going to prompt us for login credentials. And then it's going to ask us what we want this new search form to be called, and do we want to create some sort of description for it as well. And I'm going to keep it generic. We'll just call it WebLink. And we'll create that. Now once we create it, it's going to pop into this little configurator. So now we have sort of a wizard that's going to let us drag and drop our options. We have a canvas here, and then it'll give our details along the right-hand side. And you'll notice that there aren't too many options. It looks like only 4 or 5, but that custom input is where the real meat and potatoes is going to be, that there's a lot of strong, powerful capabilities within Laserfiche if you know the correct way to use some of those search features, utilize tokens, and things of that nature. And I'll show you some basic features on how to do that. But let's go ahead and start out with quick search. This is exactly, this is going to be just the quick search we saw earlier. So that option here, do we want to include that on this web link or on this web form? We can make it required so that you have to use, put something in there. You can also configure it so that there's a list option. So it's a quick search looking for some basic names. We can define that list that way rather than just free-form text where you have, the sky's the limit. You can search for any document within the repository. We can limit it down, so maybe we only want to look at things like agendas or minutes. We can also limit it to, do we want to include metadata fields? Do we want to have any text? When I say text, I mean, is there actual written text within the document itself? Or do we just want to limit it to the name of the document? So we have some flexibility there also. And something else you'll notice that we have, I'll show a little bit more later, do we want to include this as radio buttons or checkbox groups, or do we want to just have it as an open field? And always there will be the ability to add CSS class and style if you have someone who's more, like I said, more adept at programming. Now I'm actually going to leave the quick search out of this, but I want to show you some of the other possibilities we have here. The next one down is date. Modification date, very simple. Every time you bring a document in, it's going to stamp it automatically with a date that it was last modified. If you want to switch that up, we also have the option for creation dates, which I think is probably a little bit more common. When was this first entered into Laserfiche? If we want to give ourselves even more flexibility, there's a checkbox here where we can offer it a date range. So now our users can say, well, I'm looking for a document that was created between this date and this date. And once again, show advanced is going to give us basic capabilities for CSS class and style again. Now I'm going to skip input for the moment because we're going to come back to that. Text is literally just text that if you want to insert another column or break up the different sections here, maybe you could call this one advanced. It's just going to add some text to the form so you can see what's coming next. Now, one of the other capabilities you have that's probably a little bit more powerful and, in my opinion, a little more useful is selecting different template fields. So selecting metadata fields. If you want this form to be associated with certain more specific types of documents, like agenda, like minutes, or if you just want public-facing documents that are flagged as such, we can go in here and select the template we want to choose from. In this case, I'm just going to use the public documents one. And it gives me a list of the different metadata fields that are on that public document. It even tells me if it's going to be a date field, a text field, or a list field. And I can do doc type or actually public or private. So here you can see that it's going to automatically bring in the list. We should be able to see already that the list is already configured. So we can see exactly what the list items are going to be. And if we want to add something to them, if we want to build on the metadata field that's already in place, we do have the flexibility and capability to do that from here. At any point, we can also make these required. So maybe we want to make sure that they are required to choose either public, private, or whichever the other one was. If we want to mix and match with additional fields from other templates, we can do that as well. There's a lot of flexibility here. So pretty simple, right? The more complicated piece, or the more powerful, in my opinion, is when we start adding custom inputs. So custom input is first of all going to just allow us to label our field, and I'm going to label it doc type. And then it's going to ask us for a variable name, which is going to come in handy a little bit later. We really just need something that's going to label this and point us back to this specific field. I'll make it really easy and just call it DT for doc type. Now, is this going to be a text where they're going to enter in freeform text to search here, or do we want that to be a list? And I actually want this to be a list, and not like a dropdown, but more so a checkbox group. So once I've selected checkbox, it'll let me create my own list items. And so I want one to be agendas. And here's the key part. When we call out this specific field and those checkboxes, the checkbox is basically going to act as it's going to grab the token of that selection and use that as search criteria. So in the value, we need to make sure that this is a search criteria that can be usable. In order to ensure that, I'm going to go ahead and add the wildcard at the beginning and the end of agendas to ensure that when that box is selected, it's basically going to autofill with agendas is somewhere in the name. And I'm going to do the same thing with minutes here. And so what that'll look like then is two checkboxes, agendas and minutes. So when one of those is selected as agendas, it's going to see that as we're searching for the word agendas. And so it has to be somewhere within either a specific template or within the name, I think is actually how I'll configure it. And it takes a lot of the weight off of the person who's actually searching for the document, and it's make it simple by just check a box, pull all the agendas, there you go, good to go. Now in order to make sure this is configured correctly though, we will have to go to our search results. So under search results, you'll see that it started to build this little tree here based on the different search options that we added earlier. So creation date matches user input. So it's kind of creating that string here. Also field, public, private matches user input. User input, of course, being the selection. What we don't see is anything for our doc type yet. So this is where you'll need to point it and say, all right, we have this other field called doc type. We labeled it DT, that's the variable. So we need to find some way for it to recognize that DT matches user input. So the way to do that is first of all, just add, recognize it's custom, and then enter search syntax. Now search syntax, if you're not familiar with it, can get a little bit complicated, but the easiest way, if you bear with me, is to simply use the search syntax from the Laserfiche advanced search function. Now this is also a bit of a preview for next month's webinar where we'll get into advanced searches and quick searches and how to really use the more advanced search functions within Laserfiche. But if I wanted to search for all agendas within Laserfiche, I could use entry name, document, and then agenda with one of these wildcards. And then if I tell it to include search syntax, it'll write that out for me so I can just copy and paste that. So essentially what I'm doing here is just grabbing that, copying it, and then going back over to my, where is it? There we go. So we can paste this. And so it's going to say that the name equals agenda, but that's also not exactly going to do what we want it to do, because we actually want it to be the input from that from the selected checkbox. So what we can do instead is say that username equals and the way to write this is going to be quotation mark and then percentage sign, left parenthesis, name of our variable, and then right parenthesis, and then right quotation mark. So if you want to take a snapshot of that, that's how we're going to do that. So what that's saying is that the name of the document is going to contain whatever we select, i.e. agenda with the wildcards on either side, and then it has to be a document. And that's it. So that's a basic way to do that. Now we can also add sort options. And we can add as many of these as we like. So when the individual is navigating through this, maybe they want to have everything searched by created date, or maybe they want to do it alphabetically by name. We can do that as well. If you are including fields from a template, maybe you want, earlier we were looking at employee ID. If we want those to come in and be sorted by employee ID, we have some flexibility to do that as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and continue with those two. We can also add a summary, some other basic information. You can add a default to the sort option. So once again, just little things here and there that add some flexibility. At any point, if you want to preview and see what your web form is looking like or what the portal looks like, you can always hit the preview option. But what I'm actually going to do is save this and then refresh it and go to the live version so we can see this in real time and take a look at what we've created. So let's go back to WebLink. Oh, you know what? I did forget one piece. Once we have this, we will need to go to the welcome page and tell it that we're ready to publish this now. So on our custom links, remember we can have folder navigation, we can have external URLs, or we can have search forms. So we want to add another search form. So use the dropdown, select search form. We'll give it a title. We'll call it what it is, WebLink. Select the one we want, hit OK, and hit save. So now we have the search form that we created here under custom links. So now if we go back and refresh, we should see there's our WebLink search form. So if we select that, the user can then log in, and now they can say, all right, we can choose our creation date, we can choose whether or not it's public or private, and then we can start adding things like agenda or minutes. So let's go ahead and just try it out and see if it works correctly. So I want to go ahead and I want to look at some documents that were created this month. I want to make sure they're public, and I just want to see, you know what, I just want to see minutes. And go ahead and sort by name. So if we hit submit, we can now see here are the different minutes that fit within this date range. And actually, you know what? Some of these don't look like they're minutes. Why would it bring up search results that I didn't necessarily search for? Well, that is another configuration piece that we can actually add or change if we go back to our search form. That at any point you want to change the search results to meet any constraint, meaning right now it's looking for everything that matches the creation date, everything that matches the field, everything that matches the custom. If we want to limit that, we can say meets all constraints. So then you can start compounding each one of those. So if we go back in here and just go ahead and refresh here, select that again, try minutes, and we'll just search for the last week, submit. Now we can see we only got 2 results. So it's working that quickly in real time. And so now your users can log into your web form, log into your portal, navigate to the minutes or whatever public documents that you'd like, and view those different options in any way that they like. So that's it for today's. If you have any questions or want additional resources or additional information on how to design web forms within WebLink, or would just like more information about WebLink in general, please visit Laserfiche Answers, laserfiche.com Solution Exchange, and also the Peak portals. Please take a moment also. If you enjoyed this, please join us for next month's webinar where we'll do Laserfiche quick searches. In this webinar, I'll walk through how to customize quick searches in Laserfiche repository to get fast results for the documents that you need. And please take a moment to fill out our survey at the end here. Like I said, that really does help us. It gives us ideas of what you would like to see, how we can help our users, and also it'll enter you in for the chance to win a free awesome t-shirt. And of course, thank you all again. And I will stay on the line for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And it looks like I do have one question here. So can you highlight the link's name in the color? So I think the question is, when we are on the actual form itself, can we make it so this is highlighted or in color? I guess I'm not sure I understand the question completely. In other words, agenda in red. So the link name in red. So are we talking about just adding color schemes to this here? Yeah, absolutely. So when you're actually configuring the links themselves, some simple HTML coding would be able to, or JavaScript would allow you to change the color scheme, but that would just be a basic customization. I don't think that there's necessarily an option, although I could also be wrong. There's a lot of different customizations we can do. So we'll see if that's one. Listing, borders. Here we are, links. Yep, so the links can all be one color, although if you wanted to actually go in and configure it with some CSS, you could change it so certain links are different colors than others. So these are the basic functions. But if you wanted all of them red, very easy to do. If you want some of them red, a little bit more customization. Good question. Any other questions? All right, I don't see any more questions coming in at the moment. So with that, I'm going to end the webinar. And a quick reminder that this will be available on the CDI YouTube channel. So if you would like to go back and view it again, please do so. Also at any point, you can reach out to any one of us at CDI and we'd be more than happy to meet with you one-on-one to walk through some of the possibilities and work on your own personal configuration. So thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time today and have a great rest of your week.